Hello and welcome to the Ode to Cinema podcast. I'm Caleb Meyer and I'm joined again by Luke Crawford.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking a bit more subjectively about our favorite TV shows. So this is just a chance for us to do a bit more of a less fact-based and more opinion-based, share some of the things that we love. And I decided to start with TV shows because I feel like there's quite a bit of similarity between TV shows and movies, but there's also quite a bit of difference. I think with TV shows you have a lot more opportunity for long-term storytelling and telling series-long character arcs and all these things that movies can't necessarily do.
There's an interesting opportunity to kind of like grow into your writing style, to where like with a movie there's a single script that you write and you may grow through different movies, but like one of my shows I plan on talking about, it's like you can tell how they grew into the style of the show. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's more opportunity for
TV
like
shows,
fan interaction and seeing what works too.
That too, yeah.
Growing into the story. Whereas with a movie, you have like 2 to 3 hours to get a story across, which can be really good because TV shows can lose you as well if they don't keep up the narrative. And so anyway, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I don't know, who should go first, you or me?
Well, I definitely can think of one that we have in common. Well, I hope you said it, but
that's later on my list. So
okay.
I'll just start then.
Go for it.
So my number 5 is kind of filling out my dramatic show, which I had such a tough time narrowing down this list, and this was a good practice for me to think through everything I've seen and kind of pinpoint what would be at the top. But for my number 5, I picked Parenthood. I don't know if have you seen any of Parenthood? Yeah, it just, I watched it in college so long after it was done. I'm not even sure when it finished airing, but it holds a special place in my heart just because at that time I have it really tied with that time in my life and getting to see this family that was very different from my own and get to know them, I don't know, kind of like they were my own family as well. And it's quite similar to like This Is Us. The thing that sets it apart from This Is Us in my mind, though, is This Is Us can sometimes feel really forced into different dramatic points.
This one felt more
similar,
natural,
but quite different. Yeah, I mean, I really like This Is Us too. I'm not totally caught up with it at the moment, but this one just felt like more natural, normal, everyday life a lot of the time.
I haven't watched
focused
either.
on dramatic points.
Yeah.
So it's my number 5. It's not like one of the most impactful shows for me, but it's something that had kind of a big impact at the same time. And anyway, that's my number 5. I'll let you go next.
Mine aren't in any specific order. These are just kind of like my top 5. So I think I think you definitely like it can be really hard for me to go, all right, this one is better than this one. So these are just like in general, no specific order, top 5.
Mine are also quite fluid and could probably be flipped around. So
gotcha. So the first one I'll talk about is Breaking Bad, which is, I feel like it's a pretty mainstream answer or like common answer, but I also think there's a reason for that. And I know a lot of people don't enjoy it because of the I remember talking to someone about how they didn't enjoy it because of all of the morality and how like the main character is this person you don't like side with a lot of the time because they're an anti-hero. But it was really the first show where I had seen this like really interesting character where you see this arc from a science teacher who's kind of a nerd and gets lung cancer all the way to, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just like you just see him dive deep into this drug empire. And I don't know, this is the show I was talking about too, where at the first season and part of the second season you can tell that it's this new show where they're figuring out how to write it, what's going to be in each episode, who the characters are, but like by the third or fourth or fifth season, they have it like down on lock, and they know exactly how to write certain characters and exactly how the show should be structured. And I think it's so cool to see the progression of not just the characters, but also the craft of like the directors and the writers.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely a deep character dive, and they really know how to do tension and everything really well. Yeah. I never finished it. I got to season 5. I'll still probably finish it at some point, but yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll move on to my number 4, which comes out of the middle school period of my life, which some of my cringy, I had a not like a super deep interest in anime, but I had friends who were really into anime, and this is one that has stuck with me throughout my life, and that's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch that.
Yeah, it's really great, and it really, I feel like, satisfies my desire for good world building and also character and everything. And I love fantasy and sci-fi stuff, and this does that really well. And there's just some great dramatic points and really epic battles, but also really deep personal stuff and character-driven things. And yeah, overall, it's one of my favorite shows. I've watched it multiple times, and yeah, so that would be my 4th pick. And it's also kind of launched my interest in like international film and television. Which I thank it for that, because I feel like otherwise, if I hadn't gotten into like foreign shows at that point, I don't think I would be at the point where I'm as interested in seeing, movies from all over the world.
Yeah, I
would still feel an aversion to anime and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think it's interesting to think about, because like I've thought about branching out to like international films with like Parasite recently, but also before that. But like in terms of TV shows, all my shows I watch are American shows, maybe the occasional like Attack on Titan or something like that. But like I've never really thought of it that way. So it's really interesting of how like it helped you branch out to international shows, which is not something I even think about.
Yeah, I guess not as many shows for me. Like I have watched a couple, but mostly film, I think. Yeah. All right, you're up next.
My second one is Mindhunter. It's on Netflix. I really enjoy a lot of David Fincher's work, and so to see a show that's like his entire style. One of my favorite films is Zodiac, so to kind of have like that movie into a show is really interesting to me, and I really enjoy it a lot, because the first season it introduces you to these really interesting characters, but also like the way they focus on details of these interviews with the serial killers is really fascinating. But on top of that, the second season, I'm not sure what the general consensus of it was, but I really enjoyed it a lot, because instead of doubling down on them going, oh, these serial killer interviews are really cool, this is what people like to watch, let's just do that more and more, they kind of took a step back and focused on the characters they created in the first season and really took time to develop those and their situations, rather than going, let's just keep these two guys going to interview serial killers, which I really appreciated, because not only did they do a great job with like further developing these characters that you cared about from the first season, they like made it super interesting and how it related to the overarching story of that season. So I'm super excited for them to delve into it. And they've also talked about how the seasons are probably going to only go to season 5, so they have like a story in mind, which I think is cool, and I'm also happy about, so it's not like they're kind of writing it on the fly. But yeah, that's my second one.
All right, sweet. My third one, I was hesitant about putting on this list because I wanted to keep it to just narrative stuff, and this is not the traditional sense of like a narrative show. But it's one I've talked about on the channel in one of my videos, and that's Dimension 20, which is a D&D show, and it blew me away. It's pretty new. I mean, they've had kind of like 2.5 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
They had two like full seasons, one mini season. They're doing like a live version, continuing the story of the first season right now, and then there's another like mini season coming up in January. And I am blown away by the improv abilities and the humor and the depth of character and everything. And I just was surprised by how invested I became in it immediately.
Yeah.
And each season is totally different too. Like the first one is all about it's typical Dungeons and Dragons stuff, but it's these kids, teens going to high school in kind of like a more modern day, like 70s set world.
That's cool.
And it's hilarious. And then the mini season was like Lord of the Rings, but from the perspective of the villains. And then the most recent season was about like New York City, but it's magical. There's a magical underworld. And the next one they're doing is like a mini world of like toys and pixies and all these things come to life.
That's
and
really cool.
yeah, it's gonna be like a more heisty type of story. So yeah, I just love the creativity, and that improv blows me away every time. And you can see more about that a little bit in the video I made on the channel. I talk about 3 different D&D shows, but that's definitely my favorite of them.
Yeah, I always think it's really cool to include shows like that, because I mean, when you think about like favorite TV shows of all time, you typically think of narrative shows. So like including a show that's similar to like Harmon Quest, where it's like real people doing this adventure, but then on top of that, people animate it. So it's
Right.
really cool. I like that a lot.
It feels so in between like your traditional narrative show and like kind of a game show, but it is telling like a continuing story. You just get to see it unfold right in front of you, which is really cool. You get all my nerdiness coming out right now on those past 2 shows.
All right, I'll move on to my third one, and I will say my third one is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I really like that one. It's one that I have a really hard time recommending to people because it's a lot of the times it's so ridiculous and over the top and so like crude, but at the same time they do these like ridiculous situations to like commentate on something that's happening in the real world, or on top of that it's just really well written. And it's like the people that play these characters have just grown into who they are, and you can tell they're just having so much fun with it and they care a lot about these characters, but on top of that it's just they're having a blast, and I love it just because it's not stupid humor too. A lot of it is very stupid humor, but it's like how it's well crafted stupid humor. I really enjoy it, and it's still going. And it's another one of those, like, you can tell how they've grown into how to write the show and how to be these characters throughout the seasons. So I really enjoy it, but I definitely acknowledge that it's not for everyone.
Yeah. Well, that kind of follows well into my number 2 pick, which is The Office, another comedy, and another one that I've done a video on the channel of. Yeah, I don't even know how many times I've watched The Office at this point, and I know you hate when people rewatch that show specifically.
It's just okay.
Yeah, and don't branch out to other things. Yeah, no, I don't. And it's such a rewatchable show, and it's like the most
I do agree
in
with
history.
that there's the rewatchability of that show is extremely high, so I can understand why people watch it over and over and over.
Yeah, I can't even remember the first time I watched it, but it's like one of the only comedy shows that I find actually strikes my funny bone. And it's just like the jokes really hit and the characters are great. Besides like some of the first season and the later seasons, like one or two of the later seasons. But like in the middle, it's really at its best. And yeah, I don't know. I just get really invested in the characters and the hijinks they get into, and as you can tell, I'm really, I really care about character and doing that well, and I think that The Office does that well once it finds its stride too. It's definitely one that's grown into after coming off of, the
Yeah.
UK version and really coming into its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it that when I watch it, it feels so much like home, and I can just like relax and engage in it and laugh and have a good time. And yeah, there are some other comedy shows that I've watched that I just don't feel like measure up to it. Usually, I'm not like a big comedy fan, especially in terms of movies. I can never really find a comedy that I enjoy, but The Office is always my go-to.
Yeah. All right. Let me think. All right. So what is this number? So my fourth one.
Yep.
My fourth show on the list is one I just finished recently, and a surprising amount. Like, I haven't really heard anyone talk about it at all. It's The Leftovers. It's on HBO. It was written and created by Damon Lindelof, who co-wrote some other shows that we may or may not talk about later. But it's pretty much like, it starts out where it's like, I'll just read the synopsis, where it's 3 years after the disappearance of 2% of the global population, a group of people in a small New York community try to continue their lives while coping with the tragedy of the unexplained nature of the event. And I just think it's this really interesting premise of like, if a Rapture-esque kind of thing happens, but it's not just a show about figuring out what happened. It's a show delving into the psyche of these characters and what it would be like to live in a world where this happens. And
seems kind of like an extended period of like the beginning of Avengers Endgame or something like that.
Yeah, and I like it just because it's not like they had a pilot and we're like, this is a really cool show idea, and then didn't really do anything with it. And it's only 3 seasons. And I think so much happens in those seasons, and I'm so glad it ended where it did, and it's not this long running thing, or it ended too soon. But I definitely think it's another one that's not for everyone, because it is very heavy and very dark at times, a lot of the times actually. But I really enjoy it just because you learn to love and hate the characters you stick with throughout the show. And I just think it's just interesting how it's not a show about finding answers for everything. It's a big show about faith and love too, which I just really like that show a lot, and it kind of popped up pretty recently, so I do recommend it, but I again understand why it's not for everyone.
Yeah. Sweet. And that brings us to my number one, which is Lost. And I think this is your other pick as well. That is also
on my list, yes.
I know this is a very controversial choice. Lost gets a lot of hate. And I think I attribute this being my number one partially due to the fact that I watched it after it was done airing.
I was fortunate enough to see the last season while it aired.
Oh, yeah?
So that was a really cool experience.
Yeah. Lost, I think, is the show that I've watched the most times, just because I've watched it so many times with like different friends and family, and every time I love getting to see their reactions to the things that happen. And it's a show of great like mysteries and cliffhangers, but I mean, a lot of people get mad about mysteries not being solved in it.
Yeah.
But to me, that I don't necessarily care as much about all the little mysteries that don't get wrapped up. It's more about the characters and these situations they're in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of how not to spoil things too, but like,
yeah.
I'm not going to dive into elements to it that I really like, which I didn't expect, when I first heard about the show. But yeah, just some really great setups and I don't even know, like just great mysteries and things that you're not exactly sure what's really going on, and then you figure it out, and it's amazing. I
also really enjoy the fact that it's not these people crash on an island and they have to figure out, and it's all about what they find or questions, but it's I love the deep dive into specifically like almost every single character, and how so much about so many different people, and it's not just like I know so much about two people, and then everyone else I kind of know a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
It's like most of the
Every
characters have an
character.
entire episode or multiple episodes dedicated to
Yep.
discovering who they are, why they act the way they do, and the complexities, which I think is a game changer for like the time, because when it came
Yeah.
out, it was this big budget thing that like enraptured people because it was so strange with the premise, but on top of that, it was so good with like developing these interesting characters. Because
Mm-hmm.
I watched an episode or two recently from season 1, and I keep forgetting how much they pack into like one episode. There were like 4 or 5 storylines going on, and normally I would kind of be hesitant about that because it seems like a lot, but it seems like they do, or to me, they do a really good job weaving the story of like what these people are going through while also addressing what they've done in the past and how you learn from that. It's so cool, and I just love it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Oh man, yeah. I've like every time I rewatch it, I enjoy it even more.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to go a certain amount of time without rewatching it,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, like going back to the earlier seasons too is just so great to see where the characters start out and then what
Yeah.
they end up being in the end. Every character has their own arc. For the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I mean, there are a couple that are more flat and
Yeah.
stay the same, but you still learn so much about them. Yeah, and honestly, I don't know if I'll ever find a show that tops that one in my mind.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there's a lot of complaining about the ending, but I honestly thought the ending was perfect, and I love it.
Mhm.
I mean, they could have gone so many different ways, but I love the way they wrapped
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah. The
Um,
thing I wanted to compare this show and then another show on my list, The Leftovers, is both of them. I know you haven't seen The Leftovers, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but both of them deal with a lot of unanswered questions, and I think this is why I like The Leftovers, and I think it might be because Damon Lindelof learned a little bit from Lost and how people reacted with that. I like the way The
yeah,
Leftovers handles the situation to where it's not focused on the bigger picture and trying to answer questions. It's more focusing on like, what do these characters believe?
yeah,
And I think that's not saying I dislike the ending of Lost. I just think that's where maybe The Leftovers, I think for me, did better. But still, I get super frustrated when people are like, "Oh, you mean Lost, where everyone's just dead?" It's very frustrating to hear that.
yep,
Because I do agree with you. I love the way it wraps up, and I love the journey you go on through it.
for sure. Yeah. So that's our list. There's so many. I mean, I wanted to get into like things that I'm watching now too that I can't really make a judgment about.
Yeah.
Are there? And I'll let you think about this too about what shows you're watching currently. So I just wrapped up watching Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time like a week ago. I
Oh.
finished watching it and I binged through that because I've had so many people recommend it, and I'm like, yeah, that might be a show I'm interested in. It was always this idea of like, I don't know, it seemed kind of like a kiddie show and kind of dumb, but I also like was really interested in the world it set up and stuff like that, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's got great character and the world is really fun, and yeah, there's some deep stuff there. I wouldn't put it on my list of favorites, but yeah,
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then I'm also watching The Good Place currently, which is in
yeah.
its final season, but it's at a break right now, and that's been a ton of fun. It's another comedy I enjoy quite a bit, and it's got a lot of deep like philosophy and just ridiculous things that happen throughout. Yeah, it's great.
I'm currently in the middle. I know Rick and Morty season 4 is
Uh-huh.
in the process of airing, and I've just really enjoyed this season a lot. That's a show I really enjoy, just because it's ridiculous and funny, but also you can tell the writers like want to write something more than just a dumb
Yeah,
animated show.
something very original for sure.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something else. I'm in the middle of The Watchmen, which is also, I think, Damon Lindelof. I'm
I didn't
really
realize
enjoying
that.
that a lot because there's a lot of care taken into the craft and how it looks and then everyone in it is so good, and I like it because the first couple episodes, it feels a little heavy or like hefty to where like there's a lot of stuff going on and you're like, I don't really get it, but I want to. And then I definitely think it gets better as it goes because you get answers in the best way, and it's not like I definitely think it can turn a lot of people off because the first episodes are so dense with backstory, or not backstory, but like the world you're in. There's a lot of context to it, and I think they do a good job with explaining that, but not like in exposition dumping you.
Right.
So I'm really enjoying that a lot.
Sweet. Yeah, and I think like television is at a point like, I don't know. I think of shows like Game of Thrones and stuff where like
we're in the
budget
golden
for TV
age
shows, yeah, the golden age of the silver screen, is just like at a point at which maybe surpasses a lot of movies at this point.
Because then you think about like miniseries where FX and AMC are coming out with like 5 or 6 episode miniseries instead of a movie or instead of like a full length show. And that's
and keep people engaged for longer too.
Yeah. And it's a better way to, I guess, tell a bigger story that can't be told in an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah, there's definitely different stories that fit each medium very well, and I think sometimes they get confused a little bit about what would fit more into a movie runtime and what would fit into a TV show. But I don't think there's one that's superior to the other. I think they're just different ways of telling stories.
Yeah.
And they're different ways of telling different stories. So, yeah. All right, well, we'll end it off as we usually do with some movie recommendations.
Heck yeah, dude.
So mine, I just saw this past weekend. I watched Knives Out.
Oh, don't spoil anything. I still need to see it. I've been wanting to see it so bad.
Yeah, I went to see it with some family, and my brother is super into like murder mysteries. And yeah, it was just a great time. It feels like a really kind of traditional murder mystery novel, but made just specifically as a movie. And it's great. It's a ton of fun. And you're like, just like you're reading a book, you're trying to figure out what's really going on. Yeah. And it's just, really fun.
I'm really excited to see it because I know how much Rian Johnson loves movies and loves genres. So like when he picks a specific genre and wants to go into it, I know he's gonna like do a good job, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. And along the same lines, I watched a Rian Johnson film in preparation. I watched Looper, which I hadn't seen in a while, but I forgot how like unique it is in its like world building, in the sense that it doesn't really. It reminds me a lot of John Wick in the sense that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that it doesn't explicitly tell you about. You just kind of guess or like infer like what's happening, and there's just like a unique style of like it takes place in the far future, but there's still this like 50s like aesthetic to a lot of things. I don't know. And it's also just like, I don't know, I just really enjoy everything about it. How it's this well-crafted story, and there's a lot of good set pieces, and the writing is really good. Yeah. So, another Rian Johnson film.
You got any other Rian Johnson films you want to recommend?
Just his whole filmography. I'm trying to think of what else he's done.
Star Wars.
Well, yeah, I know a lot of people have. That's a whole nother story.
I was looking at his filmography actually, and I don't know. Looper seems like his first really bigger film, but I haven't seen any of his other work either, so I don't.
Yeah, I know Brick. He did Brick, which I've heard about, but I have not seen. Which is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, apparently Joseph Gordon-Levitt has a cameo in Knives Out. So
really?
be on the. It's cool. Just a voice. It's like right at the beginning.
Gotcha.
But you can listen for that.
Will do. Hopefully I'll see it by the time we record next time.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, I think that's where we'll wrap it up. And cool, please comment down below what you can comment about our thoughts if you want to argue anything, or comment down below what your favorite TV shows are, and maybe you might agree with us, you might strongly disagree with us, but yeah, let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See y'all later.